Okay, so I just got landing work done. So now I'll move on to enemy planes and missiles. Let's see, stopwatch. Okay. So the enemy has two ways to battle against you in Falcon. One is with the MiG jet fighter, the other is via the surface-to-air missile, SAM. You can encounter the MiGs in a couple different ways. Black Bandit is a specific MiG mission where you encounter the plane simply by flying north from your airfield. Okay? You will also have the chance of seeing enemy planes at any time after you cross into enemy territory, no matter what the mission is. Okay? So maybe I'll try Black Bandit. Look at the Falcon landscape map on page 100 or on the quick reference card to see where enemy territory lies. Fly at first lieutenant level until you get familiar with how the MiG performs, because you can't be shot down by the MiG at this rank. Okay, so maybe I'll try Black Bandit at first lieutenant, and then I'll try it again at colonel. SAMs can be fired at you in two ways: from a specific SAM site on the ground that you can identify from the air, or via a shoulder launcher. Note that you have to fly at captain rank or above to have SAMs be active. Okay. However, your F-16 doesn't handle much differently at this rank, and although either SAM type can be launched at captain level, they can't shoot you down. Okay. On the next few pages, we'll give you an idea of what a typical MiG encounter would be like and how to down the enemy plane. Afterwards, we'll do the same for the SAMs. To be truly effective against either MiGs or SAMs, you need to become familiar with all the F-16's characteristics and features in Part 2. Okay? Study the differences in rank and mission guidelines in Part 3 to see how and where events will tend to occur. Okay? Part 4 goes over advanced knowledge that will help you be a success in battle over the long run. F-16 Wingman. You will find that there is another F-16 flying in the air. When you select a waypoint, he will fly towards it and then circle around the area. How do you select a waypoint? Use him to practice formation flying. He will appear on your radar. He is not an enemy plane. If you shoot him down at major rank or higher, you will be busted. Major, okay, that's the third one. Okay. Encountering the enemy. These examples are intended to give you an overview of the process involved in encountering the enemy's arsenal. Details of your F-16's features used in these examples are covered in Part 2. Try the different HUD modes while you're in the air. If you want a description of a heretofore unfamiliar feature that begins to appear or operate during the process, simply press the pause key and read about it in Part 2. Okay? Appear or operate. Okay, I need to take notes. Open up the notes on my phone. Okay, so I have to read the section on the map, page 100. Okay. I want to ask myself, I'm going to write down a question. How do I change waypoints? Okay. Okay, just like the procedures involved in the previous orientation and flight, everything will become second nature to you after a while. MiGs. If there are any MiGs in the area, you'll usually know fairly quick, because a square blip, 1 per MiG, will show up on your threat indicator if the MiG's radar is turned on. Also, if your ComEd screen is in radar mode and a MiG is in front of you, the data displayed on radar will give specifics on one targeted MiG's position, its airspeed, and whether you are either overtaking it, being left behind, or if it's coming straight at you. Okay. When in boresight scan mode, like looking down the barrel of a gun, the position of the MiG is displayed relative to the nose of the Falcon. The distance of the target from the Falcon is displayed in the upper left corner of the screen. The targeted MiG shows up on your radar screen as a symbol resembling a diamond, with vertical bars left and right. Radar always targets the first MiG to appear. If any additional MiGs show up on radar, they will appear as square symbols identical to those on the threat indicator. Okay, don't know what any of this looks like yet. If there's more than one MiG around, you can alternate between which one is targeted by pressing the Air Target Select key. Okay, so T to switch targets. The radar screen displays specific data on whichever MiG is targeted. Alternately, you can switch the radar to search or tracking mode by pressing the F6 key. Okay. This gives you an overhead view of the targeted MiG, in which the Falcon is located at the lower center of the screen. Okay. In this mode, the number in the upper left of the screen represents a distance range, 40, 20, or 10 miles. So if the number is 40, the targeted MiG is within 40 miles, but more than 20 miles away. If the target is getting closer to you, eventually the radar computer will change the range to 20 and then to 10. To switch back to boresight scan mode, press F5. Okay. F5 to switch the radar to boresight. What's it called? Scan mode. Okay. When a MiG is behind you, you'll have to rely on the threat indicator and your own eyes by looking out the different views to determine its position. Radar can't detect anything to the sides or rear of your plane. Okay. Threat indicator. What's the threat indicator? I'll write that down. That's some vocabulary I should. Threat indicator. Question mark. I think I know what that is, but I'm not totally sure. Radar can't detect anything to the sides or rear of your plane. Okay, I'm going to write that one down. Radar can't detect anything to the sides or rear of your plane. Okay. Oh, pictures. That's what I need. Boresight scan radar. Okay. A MiG to the front and one behind. Okay. But I thought they said it can't. Is this the threat indicator? I think. I'm not sure. Okay. Target designator in the HUD. Okay. MiG at 14,000 feet altitude, 13 miles away. Target. Waterline, F-16 position parallel to ground. MiG on a 20-degree heading. MiG traveling at 374 knots. Aspect angle. Okay. Don't know what that means. Write that down. Closure rate of 936 knots. Okay. Boresight scan radar. Okay. Oh wait, why? I'm confused. Oh, this is boresight scan radar. Okay. Tracking view radar, 20-mile range. Aspect angle. Target designator in HUD. Radar range. MiG at 13,000 feet altitude. Okay. MiG bearing of 358. MiG heading of 231. What's the difference between MiG heading and MiG bearing? Is that like one of them is the direction they're moving in? 9 miles away. Okay. MiG traveling at 298 knots, 169 left aspect angle. What is that? 691 knot closure rate. Okay. Position of F-16 is here. Target. Okay. So I think this means that the MiG is heading west to the left. Or it's heading west. 358 means that it's north of you. It's basically almost north, directly north of you. Left aspect angle. Let me just Google that, because it may not explain it anytime soon. Aspect angle. The angle between a fighter's tail and the opposing aircraft, indicating how far away the attacker is from the target's 6 o'clock position. Okay. So it's the angle from the other plane's six o'clock. Okay. So 169, that's like almost 180 degrees. So that means like you're almost directly in left aspect angle. I'm not sure how to read that. 180 aspect angle. To me, that means it's heading directly towards you. Oh, okay, and this means like it's turning to the right. Because you are not facing directly north. The bearing is directly north, but you are not facing directly north, and so that's why the aspect angle is not 180. Oh, but it's heading at 239. I gotta visualize this. So it's north. It's heading southwest. You're probably heading northeast. So it's heading southwest, you're heading northeast, and it's directly north of you. And that's how you get close to a 100-degree aspect angle. Yeah, that's what makes that makes sense. Okay, tracking rate. Okay, let's keep going. Whenever possible, you want to maneuver your plane into position behind the MiG, commonly termed moving in on a 6, where the nose of the MiG represents 12 o'clock on a clock face and the rear signifies 6 o'clock. It's certainly possible to hit the MiG with a head-on shot using well-aimed AIM-9Ls or gun bullets, but the law of averages favors the rear approach. When the MiG is in front of your plane but out of visual range, the target designator box will map the MiG's position onto the HUD. In front of your plane but out of visual range. Okay. Continue to turn and maneuver the F-16 until you're in a favorable position relative to the MiG. Well, okay, that's Okay, that's strange. Improving missile hit rate. So, okay, I'm going to write that down. Basic advice is, so the basic advice is to get behind the MiG before launching missiles. Yeah, I don't understand that, because if you're launching the missiles from far away, it could turn around. It could turn around in the time it takes the missile to get there. I don't understand that. Okay, so improving missile hit rate. Use the later model AIM-9L all-aspect missile whenever possible. This model has three advantages over the older AIM-9J. First, the AIM-9L can track an enemy plane regardless of the direction the target is facing. The AIM-9J requires that you fire at the rear of the target to provide an adequate heat source to track on. Second, the AIM-9L is less susceptible to being fooled by enemy flares. Third, the AIM-9L is more lethal. Okay, so this is good to know. This is all important stuff. AIM-9L versus AIM-9J. 9J requires firing at the rear of the plane to get a heat source. (9L) is less susceptible to flares. 9L is more lethal. Okay. Don't fire missiles if you're too close to the target. In fact, an X, called the break X, appears over the aiming at reticle when you're too close for missiles, okay? An X appears over the reticle when you're too close for missiles. Okay. An ideal minimum distance is 2/3 of a mile. Okay. An ideal minimum distance is 2/3 of a mile. Okay. Switch to the M61 gun when in tight, because anything closer to 2/3 of a mile may result in a miss from the Sidewinders. One cause would be the angular velocity of the plane relative to yours is too great, and the missile is unable to turn fast enough. The other cause is that by the time the missile starts tracking, its target is out of position. The best way to track the enemy is to use the aspect angle indicator on the HUD. Okay. We'll write that down. That seems like important advice. Best way to track the enemy is using the aspect angle indicator on the HUD. Sure. Aspect angle. Use the aspect angle indicator to help you move in on the enemy 6. Aspect angle represents the MiG's current heading relative to your current position. To calculate aspect angle, draw an imaginary line from the Falcon's current position to the target's current position. This is called the position line. Then draw another line through the target's longitudinal axis, that is, a line that matches the target's heading. The aspect angle is the intersection of these two lines. Okay. Note that in the following illustration, the aspect angle is 0 in all three examples. The position line and the heading line coincide. If the MiGs were headed directly toward the Falcon rather than heading away, the aspect angle would be 180. Okay. I see. So you want to have this thing at the bottom. You want to have this little caret at the bottom of the circle. So you kind of want to turn toward the caret. So this is 150R. This is 150L. I see. That's a helpful diagram. So you are to the left. You are 100. Right, okay. I almost feel like having that be the opposite would be, having it be this angle would be maybe more useful. Okay. In this illustration, only the center example has an aspect angle of 0 because the MiG's heading relative to Falcon is different in each case. Perhaps an easier way to think about aspect angle is visually. The little caret symbol represents the nose of the target. When you look out the Falcon's cockpit, the nose of the actual MiG would be pointed in exactly the same direction as the aspect angle caret in the HUD. Ah. Okay, let me write that down. The nose of the MiG will be pointed in the same direction as the aspect angle caret in the HUD, or say is pointed. Okay. The idea is to keep the aspect angle as close to the target's 6, that is 0 degrees, while you get close enough for your Sidewinder to lock onto the MiG's heat source. When you have a lock and are within a range of about 2 miles, launch the missile and watch it go after the MiG. Okay. Launch your Sidewinder missiles at 2 miles. Under 2 miles. Okay. In the following example, everything is looking good except for one thing. The aspect angle is 180 degrees. The MiG is coming directly toward the Falcon. So even though the missile is locked onto a heat source and you are in range, chances of a successful hit are slim because the MiG can easily maneuver out of position. I see. Okay, that makes sense. So let me write that down. Get behind the MiG. Okay, let me write that down above. The basic advice to get behind the MiG before launching missiles: if the MiG is head-on, it's easy for him to maneuver out of position. Okay. Okay, this is interesting. Interesting combat. I don't think I've messed around with combat like this before. Okay. Target designator in range. Okay. Here, the aspect angle is around 10 degrees, 7 o'clock, and the missile has a much greater chance of tracking the target. 10 degrees. In fact, it was so successful that the MiG has exploded into a fireball. Okay. If you get too close to the target before you launch, the Sidewinder might not have enough time to get a good lock. For this reason, the targeting computer will display an X called the break X across the center of the HUD. Okay. Avoiding MiGs. If you don't want, let me write that down as a separate section. Avoiding MiGs. And then what's the name of the previous section? Okay, let me zoom out a bit. Aspect angle. Okay, aspect angle. Improving missile hit rate. Okay, put that here. Improving missile hit rate. Okay. And MiGs. Threat indicator. T to switch targets. How do I change? Okay. So I don't think I took any notes on this part. Okay, so I'll put that here. Encountering the enemy. Put that MiGs section. Okay. Okay. All right. Where was I? Okay, avoiding MiGs. If you don't want to have enemy planes appear at all during the simulation, you can always specify 0 MiGs during the opening setup. However, you'll probably want to have MiGs involved most of the time. Beyond enemy lines, or at any time after an initial enemy plane has appeared, more will continue to appear. Even after you shoot down the first one, if the conditions are especially ripe for them to show up. The likelihood for MiGs to appear increases dramatically if 1. You are flying beyond enemy lines, 2. Your radar display is turned on, default mode is on, turn off with the R key, and they can detect your radar emissions. 3. You have an ALQ-131 ECM pod installed and emitting, and or 4. You are flying at high altitudes. In reality, you have to fly below 500 feet to defeat enemy radar. Okay. Obviously, if you want to keep fighting MiGs even after your basic mission requirements have been accomplished, you can do so. However, once you're ready to return home and land your plane, you don't want to have to keep fending off the enemy. Therefore, once you've completed your mission requirements, or at any other time, turn off radar and ECM, fly low, watch out for the mountains, and make a hasty retreat for home. You may still have to deal with the occasional persistent MiG, but the chances of that happening will be much lower than before. Okay, I'm going to write all this down. MiGs will continue to appear if 1. You're flying, or say MiGs are more likely to appear. More likely to appear if 1. You're flying in enemy territory. 2. Your radar is on, or to turn it off. 3. Your ECM pod is on. I don't know how to turn that off. 4. You are flying at high altitudes. Okay. Oh. stay under. So when they say in reality, does that mean in the game as well? Stay under 500 feet. Okay. Oh, I'm just right. In reality, stay under 500 feet. Don't know what that means for the game. Okay. When you finish your mission, turn off radar and ECM. And fly low. Back home. Okay. Okay. Generally get in the habit of flying low and fast with your radar off to avoid MiGs as well as SA-2 and SA-6 missiles from SAM sites. Okay, low and fast. Okay. It follows from the above paragraphs that if you want to avoid MiGs during the Milk Run mission, don't fly into enemy territory. SAMs and MiGs will never appear at the same time. The enemy doesn't want to shoot down their own plane. Okay, that's very important to know. SAMs and MiGs will never appear at the same time to avoid friendly fire. Okay. Surface-to-air missile, SAMs. If you take a look at the Falcon landscape map, you'll notice quite a few locations in an enemy territory that are set up for firing surface-to-air missiles at your F-16. Let me check. Let's go to page, I think it was 100. Page 100, yeah. SAM site. Okay, so these are mountains. So that's a SAM site. These are SAM sites. Oh, that's a lot of SAM sites there. And these are SAM sites. Okay, got it. Milk Run. Okay, got it. What's this, a lake? Yeah. Okay. SAMs are used primarily for defending ground strongholds from air incursions. They can be fired at you in two ways, from a specific SAM site on the ground that you can identify from the air, or via a shoulder launcher. Okay, so I'll write that down. SAMs are used to defend ground targets? Strongholds, ground targets from enemy air attacks. Okay. Ask any pilots who flew in Vietnam or the Middle East about SAMs, and they'll tell you that nothing is as scary as the sight of a SAM launching off its pad, leveling off, and heading at Mach 3 directly toward your plane. A SAM launch has been described as watching a telephone pole explode from the ground with fire coming out its rear. Wow. SA-2 guideline missile. Guidance radar, range 31 miles, max speed Mach 3 plus, service ceiling 70,000 feet. The SA-2 was put into production in 1956 and designed to intercept high-flying, bomb-laden aircraft. This missile system is the most widely used in the world. SA-2s have limited effectiveness against swift and maneuverable aircraft. The ALQ-131 ECM jamming pod will jam the guidance system of the SA-2s, making them virtually useless. Using chaff is another good way to spoof an SA-2. These missiles are always launched from SAM sites, okay? SA-2 use the ECM pod or chaff to escape these. Okay. SA-6. Guidance radar, range 20 to 37 miles, depending on altitude. Oh, so I'll say these are radar guided. Rather than like heat seeking, I guess. 20 to 37 miles. Max speed, oh, I should write down the range too. 31 mile range. Radar guided. 20 to 37 mile range. Depending on altitude. Depending on your altitude. Max speed Mach 2.8, service ceiling 50,000 feet, okay. The SA-6 made its introduction in 1967. Before the ALQ-131 was placed into operation, this missile could destroy its targets regardless of ECM or maneuvering. The jamming pod usually will do a good job against the SA-6. Chaff is minimally effective, but that's better than nothing. This missile, like the SA-2, is launched from SAM sites only, and is all too effective against aircraft flying at medium altitudes. Okay. The ECM will usually do a good job of against these. Chaff is minimally effective. Okay. SA-7 Grail missile, guidance heat-seeking, range 6 to 7 miles, max speed Mach 1.5, service ceiling 4,921 feet. Okay, that's good. That's very different. Heat-seeking. Spelled that wrong. Heat-seeking. 6 to 7 mile range. 40, that's amazing. That's such a low service ceiling. Service ceiling. Okay. The SA-7 is a shoulder-launched heat-seeking missile. Oh. Okay. Shoulder-launched heat-seeking 6 to 10 miles. Okay. These missiles were designed to be used against low-flying targets. The published service ceiling of the Grail is 4,921 feet, but a Hunter in 1971 was hit at 11,500 feet. The missile is not considered very lethal. Okay, so officially a not very lethal. Over half the A-4 Skyhawks in the Yom Kippur War that were hit by SA-7s returned to base. On the other hand, half of them didn't. Since any foot soldier can fire an SA-7, these missiles shouldn't be launched from a SAM site, so you can't see the ground locations where they come from. The best defense against an SA-7 is to fly above 10,000 feet. A combination of flares and high speed is also very effective, okay? Your best defense is to fly above 10,000 feet. A combination of flares and high speed is also very effective. Okay. Avoiding SAMs. Intelligence has done a good job of identifying on the landscape map the locations of all known SAM sites where SA2s and SA6s are fired from. Foot soldiers are always on the move, so you won't know an SA7 is in the area until it's launched and you see the launch light appear on your threat warning system. Okay. L and H is your warning light that a SAM has launched. SA2 and SA6. Carrying the ALQ-131 ECM, Electronic Countermeasures Jamming Pod, can greatly improve your chances against these SAMs. When activating and emitting, the ALQ-131 completely jams SA2 missiles to the point where they don't even launch. The enemy may still launch an SA6 in an attempt to burn through the jamming. The only downside of using the ALQ-131 is that it broadcasts to the enemy that you're around. Expect to see some MiGs appear in the near future. Okay, if you turn on your ECM pod, expect to see MiGs soon. Okay. Since SA2 and SA6 missiles are radar guided, your threat warning system will pick up the specific site that launches one and display it as a small blip on the threat indicator at its location to your plane. The site itself projects the radar beam that the missile follows. This blip is smaller than the one that represents an enemy plane. Okay. The blip on your threat warning indicator that represents a SAM is smaller than the one used for a plane. Oh, not threat warning indicator, threat indicator. If you don't have an ALQ-131 pod, chaff combined with hard maneuvering can defeat the SAM. Three, two, three, 1, 2. Why is 3 over here? Is this supposed to be 1? I think this is supposed to be 1. So you're here, it launches from here. I see, you want to get it to have to go in a circle. Chaff combined with hard maneuvering can defeat a SAM. You want to get it to go in a circle. Okay. Fly. Well. Okay, avoiding a SAM. The first thing you must do during a SAM launch is to visually spot the launch. Remember, look for an airborne object that resembles a telephone pole with flames coming out the rear. as it leaves the SAM site. Turn your plane toward the missile. Wait for the missile to begin leveling off. At this point, roll your plane upside down and pull several Gs into a dive. Head directly toward the ground. At the same time, start releasing chaff. Continue to dive for several seconds or until the SAM starts to dive. You may have a look out the side or rear views to relocate the missile. At this point, release some more chaff and pull back hard on the stick. Kick in the afterburner and start a steep climb. Because of the small fins that maneuver a SAM and its great speed, it can't turn with an F-16 and will eventually run out of gas. Another way to avoid SA-2s and SA-6s is to fly low and close to the ground. However, doing so makes you vulnerable to SA-7 launches. Okay, let me write all this down. Avoiding a SAM. 1. Visually spot the launch. 2. Turn your plane toward the missile. 3. Wait for the missile to begin leveling off. 4. Roll upside down and pull several Gs into a dive. 5. Head directly toward the ground. 5. Release chaff. 6. Dive for several seconds or until the SAM starts to dive. 7. Release more chaff. Pull into a steep climb with afterburner. Pull hard into a steep climb. You can also fly low, but you'll be vulnerable to SA-7s. Okay. It's weird that they use the same designation for both, like a personal weapon and a vehicle-mounted weapon. SA-7. Since these missiles are shoulder-launched, there's no SAM site to identify. The SA-7 looks like a smaller version of the SA-2 or SA-6 when it's in the air. They're not as lethal as the other SAMs, but they can shoot you down. Flying fast and launching flares are a secondary defense against the SA-7. The best defense is to fly high, above 10,000 feet, beyond the SA-7's service ceiling. You can use the same air-to-ground weapons against SAM sites that are used to attack other ground targets. Okay. So that first part was just for the SA-2s and SA-6s. Okay. And then SA-7s. Best defense is to fly above 10,000 feet. Secondary defense is to fly fast and launch flares. Okay. And I'll write down SAM sites can be destroyed with air to ground weapons. Okay. Oh, okay, so that's finished with part 1. Awesome. How much time have I been? Oh, 51 minutes. Okay, so I think maybe I'll stop there, and then maybe next time I will try to actually fly a mission. Maybe the milk run, and then maybe I'll try the Black Bandit after that. Cool.